Just like to ask you, did you watch the committee's exchanges last week with the two scientists on gas as a transition fuel and in particular fracked gas from the US?
Yes, I saw the presentations, yes.
Okay, and would you take issue with much of it, or would you agree broadly with what the scientists were saying, particularly Professor McMullen and Professor Howard?
Yeah, so I suppose there was reference to methane being 100 times more damaging. That would be contrary to the IPPC figures on that. But notwithstanding that, I suppose we have to look at this in the context of our role in the supply chain of gas, and we support security of energy supply in the country, and you know, different sources of gas are required to do that. It is a matter for policymakers and regulators to decide what gas is appropriate, what gas is not appropriate, and therefore we don't get involved in either supporting or not any particular source of gas. But once the gas comes on our network or is presented, we will treat all those forms of gas in the same manner.
Because the reason I'm asking you that is because Professor Howard, who joined us by video link from New York, his research is the most advanced and the most recent on methane and the damage that it is doing in terms of the rising global temperatures. But one of the things he points out is that we should be taking cognizance of upstream emissions. In other words, if we import fracked gas into Shannon, we shouldn't be just ignoring what has happened in the course of fracking it, because we share the one atmosphere as inhabitants of the planet. Do you, as policy, take upstream emissions into account?
We do, and I suppose gas in Ireland comes from either from the indigenous source in the Corb gas field, or via the interconnector with a very small amount still coming from Kinsale. The leakage of methane in gas production in Europe, and this is from the European Environmental Agency, is 0.6% well-to-wheel or well-to-end use. We're very conscious of this and continuing to monitor it from our own network as well. And our own network is because it's a relatively new network in terms of a European context, the figure is about 0.1%. So in the overall context, it's an extremely small amount that is coming from the sources of gas that we have.
Fair enough. I'm not correcting you on that. You're probably right on that figure. But what we were examining last week was the emissions from fracked gas from North America, which is what the intention of the LNG of Shannon is to import. And that is not the evidence that Professor Howard gave us. He said the emissions are extremely high, and probably at the moment the fracking process in North America accounts for more than 30% of all methane emissions across the planet. And I'm just wondering if you, in your vision for 2050, have you taken account of the PCI listed project for frack gas in Shannon? Have you thought about that? Have you factored it into your graph here for how the future might look in 2050, etc.?
No, we haven't, because until such time as we know that there is an LNG terminal going to be built, we haven't factored it in. What we have factored in is our existing sources of gas plus the renewable gas and hydrogen that we refer to in the Vision 2050. Okay,
and another point that the Professor made quite well and explored it quite thoroughly was that these projections for 2050, what we have to do, and given the date 2050 for it, is way too late. We need to move faster and bring the levels right down by 2035. You've been politically mandated to give us this vision for 2050. If you got a political mandate tomorrow to give us a vision for 2035, do you think you could do it?
Certainly, I mean, within the Vision 2050 document, we've set out targets not just for 2050, but we've also set out targets for 2030. In line with the Climate Action Plan and complementary to the Climate Action Plan. So we've been quite open in saying that We believe with the correct supports in place that 20% of the gas on our network could be renewable gas by 2030. Now there's a trajectory to get there and a profile, but given the research that we have done and the availability of feedstocks and the level of interest in industry, both in terms of the production side of renewable gas but also the demand side of renewable gas, we believe that's a very achievable target.
So your prediction of abated natural gas amounting for 50% of total gas production by 2050 is totally reliant on carbon capture and storage. Now, you're both saying here that that is proved, it's well established, it's been used to great effect elsewhere. I've seen evidence to the opposite. Are you totally reliant on that as the future technology, that it's been achieved, or that somewhere in the future we may achieve it?
I think the technology is proven. I think, as I said earlier, the scale of implementation is still fairly low. I mean, there's I think about 18 plants that are operational across the world, and there's another 20 or 25 that are in development right now, with lots more to come. So I don't think that there's a massive, at this stage, rollout of the infrastructure. But my point was the technology is all proven. There's nothing about technology that's difficult to do. The challenge has been getting the numbers to work and the economics of it all.
So at the moment, it's not terribly successful. There's a low rate of success.
In Europe, it's been a low rate of success, but it's really starting to take off now. In the UK, for example, in the consultation the Department of Energy in the UK launched over the summer, they want to have one full chain carbon capture and storage plant operational by the mid-2020s and a mainstream large implementation by from 2030 on. So it's about overcoming the obstacles that have caused it to not happen so far. In Europe, they're not technical. They are much more about the legal frameworks and about the risks and who owns the risks, that kind of thing.
Okay, but nevertheless, this framework is based on a faith in possible future technological development rather than something that we can actually rely on.
Well, I don't think it's reliant on technological development. I think it's reliant on getting the right framework in place so that the proven technology can be implemented in scale. And in fact, that consultation that the Department of Energy have undertaken is exactly on that point. It's what kind of regime should they put in place to incentivise the completion of large amount of carbon capture and storage. So it's a legal regulatory framework issue. It's not a technology issue.
Okay, and can you say for sure that this Vision 2050 and everything that happens in between will keep us in line with our Paris targets?
I think that,
what I'd say is yes, in combination with other technologies. So like we're fully supportive of rollout of wind energy and of solar energy and all the other renewable energies. But we need to bear in mind that electricity at the moment represents 20% of our final energy demand, and with the potential that it might go up to 30% through increases in use of electricity in transport and heating, that still leaves 70% of our energy requirements today that are essentially not being addressed, and that's the area that we're focusing on. So we feel that in combination with the other technologies, including wind and solar and all of those technologies, that we can play a very significant role. We've stated a figure, and that's based on the calculations. If we roll out the level of renewable gas that we've spoken about, CNG, CCS, and in due course hydrogen can even take it further again, we believe we can contribute to a 30% reduction, which is a very significant reduction. So like today, Ireland's natural gas is 30% of Ireland's primary energy mix. If by 2050 we can have 50% of that provided by renewable gas and hydrogen, and the other 50%
dependent on
abated.
carbon capture and storage working.
No, sorry, the first 50% is renewable gas and hydrogen. The second 50% is dependent on the CCS technology. Yeah.
And I suppose my kind of last question for you is when, I'm not sure it was one of you, but somebody from Gas Networks Ireland gave evidence at the scrutiny of the climate emergency bill on, to stop the exploration of gas and oil, and said that we'd about 12 years left in Corrib. I heard a figure mentioned last night of 5 years. Have you any idea how long we have left in Corrib?
I suppose the figures are updated on an annual basis. Our view at the moment is that it's somewhere probably between 12 and 15 years.
12 to 15. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator McDowell.